We're at Hilton Head Island in South Carolina at Hudson's restaurant with Andrew Carmines, the proprietor here, getting ready to have the most fabulous South Carolina social event that exists.
Yeah, the famed South Carolina oyster roast.
And why are our oysters undoubtedly the best tasting ones you can get?
Well, I think for a lot of reasons, but I think for me, the number one reason is that they are really briny or salty, for the people that haven't heard that term before. We have very few freshwater, basically in Beaufort County, no freshwater tributaries. So our salinity is very high and very seldom changes.
A lot of people fuss because our oysters tend to be clustery, and I think that's part of their charm personally, because to me an oyster roast is a social event, and if you just ate 19 big fat oysters right off the bat, then you go home and where's the camaraderie?
That's right.
And the storytelling.
And it's kind of like a puzzle too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun to
yeah,
try to get into those tricky ones. You know, the fact that we have cluster oysters here is great. I mean, there's in such abundance in this region in Beaufort County. And an oyster roast is just a great way to be able to enjoy something that's a lot harder to shuck as a single select oyster or shuck to fry. It's a really easy, fun way to enjoy it in its simplest form.
I also think the fact that our oysters aren't so huge, to me, is a plus, because I like them as close to raw as possible, and I want it to just kind of slip down my throat. Is that something you think?
A nice bite-sized oyster is good. And I'll tell you, 10 years ago, if we served an oyster that looked like this as an oyster on the half shell, somebody might complain that it's not big enough. But
really?
That perception has changed a great deal, and I think people appreciate the flavor more than they do the size of the oysters. I think that's just a shift nationally, globally, on people really wanting to know more about where their food comes from, and are really invested in eating things that are really, really tasty.
We talk about the R mutts as being our oyster mutts, and is there a good reason for that?
Yes, absolutely. And mariculture's changed that to some degree, but what we kind of try to do here with oysters is they're going to be at their best when you get that first frost.
Oh.
So November, December, and they're going to stay great until March. Now the reason why is because the oyster's metabolism in the winter slows down.
That makes sense.
And the meat plumps up. The oyster stores protein in the form of glycogen, and that oyster will plump up. And so you still get the brininess, but you get a silkiness and texture as well. So that's going to be premium time is December, January, February, the first part of March. They're going to be the best.
So even though from the standpoint of safety, you might be able to eat them at other times, there's just no point in compromising flavor, because it wouldn't be quite as good.
90% of the oysters that I eat them in those months that I just mentioned. They're just so much better that time of year for us.
And then we hear it's important to recycle the shells. Is that something that most of the restaurants have gotten on board with?
A lot of people are doing it now. There's a great local organization called the Outside Foundation that's actually spearheading some of that on the island. They're working with the Department of Natural Resources. We actually recycle our shells and put them out on our own leases.
Of course.
So if you eat oysters on the half shell at Hudson's, we take the top shell and most of the bottom shells, and we'll take them and put them out on our leases, and they actually provide habitat for oysters that are reproducing in the wild.
The young oyster is actually a little free swimmer, isn't it?
Yeah, the larval oysters are essentially, when they're the male oyster and the female oyster, the egg and the sperm meet asexually in the water. A larval oyster is formed, and the larval oyster sort of floats around in nothingness, consuming a buffet of algae for about 21 days. And then grows a cement gland and has one opportunity to attach to a hard object, which in our neck of the woods is almost always another oyster. And that's why we have oysters that grow in clumps and clusters.
Well, I sure am glad that these fellas found something hard to hold on to.
Yeah, me too.
And as hard as they may stay to try closed tonight, they're not going to stay closed for me.
No, they're not.
Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.